In this video, we'll be looking at blogs, a short term for the longer expression weblogs. My name is Mark Pegram, and I'll be taking you through the material about blogs. In every online video, you'll see a brief notice like this one. It's a reminder that although you can watch the videos as often as you wish and even download them, copyright law prevents us from sharing them with anyone who is not enrolled in this course. Essentially, a blog is like an online diary where the entries appear in reverse chronological order and where people can leave comments. This is a diary kept by an English learner from Qatar whose teacher gets all of the students in the class to make regular postings. And you can see here some responses from his classmates to his posting called The First Novel in My Life. And here are some responses to another posting called The Camels in Our Life. If you look at those comments and you think that they seem a little bit like a discussion board, you're not wrong. This is a good illustration of the principle of convergence, where we're seeing similar kinds of functionality in a lot of Web 2.0 and Web 2.0 related tools. Actually, blogs are a great platform, both for reflection on the one hand in the diary style entries, and also for conversation and collaboration on the other in the comments feature. Like wikis and a number of other Web 2.0 tools, blogs are typically available in a freemium model. That means you get a basic level of functionality for free, but if you want enhanced functionality or enhanced privacy features, you may need to pay an annual fee. It means that you can explore a number of different blogging platforms before deciding which one to use and perhaps to invest in. If you'd like a really good illustration of the principles underpinning blogs, you might like to pause this video and go to the address that you see at the bottom of the screen. There, you'll find a Common Craft video explaining the philosophy of blogging rather than focusing so much on the technology itself. This can be a great video to show to students if you're planning to get them involved in some blogging activities. Because of the combination of reflection and interaction which blogs allow, they're often seen as a great social constructivist platform. Let me give you an example of how this can work from a class that I taught a few years ago. In this class, all of the students kept their own personal blog, and each week they tried to answer some guiding questions about the topics we'd covered in class. Now, as you can see from this blog entry, this particular student had missed this class. Nevertheless, she has tried to answer the questions as best she can, but with the third question she's written, what is the place of hypertext literacy in the classroom? Hypertext, I'm going to have to clarify what this one is. Now, if we have a look at the comments on this blog post, you'll see that I've kicked them off, but then some other students in the class have come in. Jess, awesome overview. Hypertext is. So this is a student explaining what hypertext is. A second student then comes in and says, to add on to Lexi's comment, here's a bit more information. And then a third student comes in just to expand on NetSpeak, and again, there's some more information. So as I've commented under that particular comment, what these students are doing is really illustrating a social constructivist approach in action. Because it is possible to then go back and alter a blog post, you can see that's exactly what the owner of this blog did. So she's now been able to answer that question about hypertext literacy thanks to all of the input from other students in her class. As I say, that's a great illustration of social constructivism in action. The blog that you saw on the previous slides was created with Blogger, which is a popular service among educators. So too is WordPress. But whichever blogging service you choose, it's now very easy to set up a blog that is template driven and where it's possible to incorporate multimedia materials. This particular blog was set up by a science teacher I worked with a number of years ago. As you can see, he's incorporated a video and a slideshow, and there's also a counter to show where visitors to his blog come from. And those visitors can be anywhere in the world. If you'd like a few more ideas about what you can do with blogs in an educational context, you might like to pause this video again and go to the address at the bottom of the screen. where you'll find a video all about blogs in the classroom. Now, let me show you a few examples of the wide range of things that teachers and students can do with blogs. This is a Taiwanese learner of English whose teacher gets all of the students in her class to maintain an online reflective diary in the form of a blog. Even though these students are not at a very high level, they are talking about things that they want to talk about, and they know that they have an audience, and that always makes students lift their game. They can get plenty of feedback from their teacher, from their peers, and potentially even from the wider internet. At the opposite end of the spectrum, this is a Chinese learner of English who, at the time he wrote this blog, was studying in Auckland in New Zealand. You can see that his writing is much more sophisticated, and he's practicing a lot of fairly complex discourse features. So blogs really can be used right across the educational spectrum, from people who are at a fairly low level linguistically to people who are at a much higher level. Over the next few slides, you'll learn about a blogging exercise set up by a Perth teacher of English as an additional language whom I worked with in 2014. She had all of her students create individual Tumblr blogs using their mobile devices, and then they were able to follow each other's blogs. As you can see here, students who were absent from class were able to pick up notes from their classmates' blogs. In this exercise, students were asked to choose a theme from a class discussion and then find supporting quotes in the novel that the class was studying. They put those quotes on their blogs, from where other students could then collect them. Similarly, students were asked to post questions based on an investigation topic on their own blogs. Other students could then visit their classmates' blogs and add their own questions. This way, the class as a whole built up a database of questions. And finally, as you can see here, students would reblog images and questions from their teacher as they were preparing for their speaking exam. So, all in all, in this particular class, blogs function both as individual study platforms, but also collectively as a class study platform. This is a blog from a primary literacy class. As you can see, the teacher has posted the name and the front cover of a book, and there are certain questions for the students to answer, which they can respond to using the comments feature on the blog. This is a blog set up by a teacher I worked with in Hong Kong to keep parents informed about what their students were doing at school, and also to serve as a record for the students of what they'd covered. As you can see, with this particular blog template, it was possible to simply switch between languages, which was very useful because this teacher was working in English with her students, but many of the students' parents did not speak good English. They had Cantonese or Mandarin as a first language. So it should be clear by now that it's possible for students to set up individual personal blogs, but it's also possible to have class blogs. Here's another example of a very creative class blog. This was built by a primary teacher in Hong Kong, and it's essentially an electronic version of a toy diary. There was a class toy, this monkey called Bobo, which one student in the class would normally take home each night along with a paper diary. And the student's task was to write an entry in the diary saying what the toy got up to. Next day, both the toy and the diary came back to class and got passed on to the next student. But this, as I say, is an electronic version of a toy diary. So students still took the monkey home, but instead of writing in a paper-based diary, they made an entry on the blog. That could be read and commented on by all of their classmates. What was unexpected with this exercise was that students very quickly turned it into a multimedia blog. So not only did they write about the toy, they also took pictures, they even shot videos, and they posted those on the blog as well. So this turned into a very interesting, collaborative, multimedia literacy exercise. Here's another very different usage of a blog for a group project. This is for a library course where the blog was used to announce the topic of the week each week, and participants on the course were asked to respond using the comments feature. And here's an example of a more administratively oriented blog. This one was set up as a way of sharing Borders Council records at a Singaporean school. The records were circulated on the blog to committee members, and as you can see in this screen capture, the records could be very much multimodal. In this particular case, you can see a screen capture of a Padlet discussion wall which has been circulated to the council members. One initiative that has really taken off in recent years in the UK is known as quad blogging. Here, 4 different schools work together. For 1 week, the students at one school do the blogging, and the students at the other 3 schools respond. Then it moves on to the next school. So basically, every 4 weeks, the students in a given school do the blogging and the other students respond. It's a great way of building up relationships between schools. It's a great way of introducing children to their peers in other parts of the city or the country. Of course, you can do this kind of thing across national borders as well. Quad blogging has now gone international. I've worked with several teachers in several countries who've signed up their own classes to work together with 3 other classes in other countries on blogging projects. If you're interested in this, then go to the quadblogging.net address that you see at the bottom of the screen. To hear primary school students who've used the quad blogging service describe their experience in their own words, you might like to pause the current video and go to the address at the bottom of the screen. This is a blogging project set up by a teacher that I worked with in Bangkok a couple of years ago. Her Thai students who were learning English kept a blog about Thai culture, and they wrote it in English. There was a school they worked with in Japan where learners of English kept a blog about Japanese culture, and again, of course, they wrote in English. So every week the Thai students would post about their own culture, the Japanese students would come in and make comments. Similarly, the Japanese students would post about their culture and the Thai students would go and make comments on their blog. Obviously, the students were practicing English along the way, but they were also having a really important intercultural experience. And here you can see some responses by the Japanese students to one of the Thai blog postings. A little earlier, we saw an example of a toy diary conducted on a blogging platform. It's also possible to conduct an international toy diary exercise, as in the Teddy Bear Exchange. This is a program that is no longer running in its current format, but it would be possible for teachers to organise to do something like this with other teachers that they know in different countries. In this particular case, a group of Aboriginal children sent a kangaroo to a group of Canadian children, and the Canadian children sent a beaver to the Aboriginal children. It was then possible to photograph these toys in different locations and for the classes to talk to each other about life in their own countries on the basis of where the toy went and what it got up to. It's an interesting idea for a collaboration that could easily run on a blogging platform. And here's a very interesting example of a cross-cultural, multilingual, and ultimately multimodal blogging platform used by learners of German, French, and Spanish at Dublin City University. Students were given tasks in English, but there were materials available in the different languages, and they responded in whichever target language they were learning. As the semester wore on, they were also required to incorporate more and more multimodal elements. Really, the sky is the limit when it comes to the possible uses of blogging platforms for intercultural and even multilingual learning. One other point to mention about blogs is that they can be a very good way for teachers to keep up to date with the latest developments in their field. This is just one example, the Scootle Lounge, directed at Australian teachers and offering updates about the use of new technologies in the Australian classroom. However, it's open to everyone. So if you're interested, this is a blog that you could check out and sign up to follow. If you're interested in blogs about educational technologies or new technologies in general, you might like to check out this blog feeds page on the Digital Learning website. It's at the address that you'll find at the bottom of the screen. So, what about some variations on the basic idea of blogging? Here are a few services you might want to check out. Feel free to pause this video at any time and go and have a look at them. Storify allows you to pull together stories from many different social media sources. And if you're working with young learners, you might like to try out KidBlog. I've seen several teachers work with this service over the last few years, and it gives them much greater control over what children are seeing and doing online. It's available in both a web-based and an app format. Another app-based alternative to KidBlog is this one here, Kids Journal. You might like to check it out too, depending on what level of students you're working with. Yet another educational service available in both web-based and mobile formats, and which can be used across educational levels with oversight by the teacher, is Penzu. You might like to take a quick look. It's also been popular in the last couple of years. With all digital tools and services, there are certain dangers. There's one main danger I want to point out with blogs. As Andrew Keane is pointing out here, anyone can say anything they want on a blog. And actually, much the same thing is true of many other Web 2.0 services. It's therefore important that we teach students to evaluate all of the material that they come across online. But actually, when students write their own blogs, we naturally create a teachable moment. They soon come to realize that they can say whatever they want online, and so too can anyone else. That's something that we really need to highlight to them. This is a really important lesson in information literacy, sometimes also known as critical literacy. This is one of the key digital literacies that we need to acquire and that we need to ensure that our students acquire as we move into an ever more digital era. So, pulling all of this together, we can say that blogs are a great reflective tool and they're a great interactive tool as well. They fit extremely well with collaborative constructivist learning approaches. On the downside, there may be some information literacy issues. Students need to learn that what they read on blogs or indeed on the wider internet is not always necessarily reliable. But in fact, writing their own blogs, as I've already said, can be a good way of helping them to come to understand that. Inappropriate feedback is a possibility if students have public blogs. Most school teachers these days would actually use private blogs. So class students, class members would be able to access each other's blogs, but the wider public would not. Lack of feedback may also be an issue. In fact, it's probably more likely to be an issue, certainly with private class blogs. If a student is putting a lot of effort into what they write online, it is really important that they get feedback both from the teacher and from their peers. Most teachers deal with this by setting up a pretty tight structure where they say to their students, okay, each week you need to comment on, say, 2 of your classmates' blogs. That's one way of ensuring there's plenty of feedback for everyone. Now that we've discussed the use of blogs in education, you might like to go to the blogs page of the Digital Learning website, which you'll find at the address on the screen. There, you'll see a summary of most of the main points that I've made in this video. You'll find links to examples of educational uses of blogs, and you'll find links to places where you can go to set up your own blog. There are also some more references where you can get further ideas about educational blogging.